All right, so here we have an intro to point-slope form. And point-slope form is linear equations not at time zero. So we have y equals m times x minus our first x, then close the parentheses, plus y. So that m is still going to be our slope. That number in front of x is still our slope. Our first x is going to be a number, and we do the opposite of this first number like we did when we were handling arithmetics. And then y, we do the same as that first y. Now, this is important. You do the opposite of the first x into and out of the equation, okay? Only for the equation, into and out of. So let's go through an example. So example 1, we're gonna write an equation from a table. Okay, so the first thing we wanna do is we wanna figure out what our slope is. So as we go down on the y side, we are adding by 2. As we go down on the x side, we are also adding by 2. So this means that our slope is 2 over 2. However, just be careful because that simplifies to a 1. So I'm going to start writing my equation. I have y equals my slope 1 that we just found times x. I've got to figure out my first x value. So my first x value is 1. So I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to do minus 1. And then my first y value is a positive 3. So I'm going to do plus 3. So again, opposite of that first x only. Everything else stays the same. You find the slope, do the same as that first number. But this is no longer called a y-intercept. This is part of a point because it's not at time 0. Time 0 is the only time we have a y-intercept. So let's look at our next problem. So we have y equals 4 times x minus 2 plus 3. I got to change the slope into a fraction. All right, so it's going to be 4 over 1. Now I got to start my table. So once again, we do the opposite. If we see minus 2, we're going to write a 2. This plus 3, we do the same. And then for our slope, the top number tells me to add 4. The bottom number there tells me to add 1. So I'm going to fill out my table, and there we go. Okay, in this next problem, we're going to fill out a table and write an equation from a given slope and point. So my slope is 5. So I rewrite that as 5 over 1. My point, that first number is your x and the second number is your y. So I don't have to change anything. I can keep everything the same here. So I got the 2 stays because it's only opposite going into and out of the equation. And this 3 stays the same. This tells me what to do for my y, so I'm going to add 5. And the bottom number there tells me what to do for my x, so it tells me to add 1. So there's my table filled out. Now I can write my equation. So my equation is going to go y equals, they gave us my slope, it's 5, so I can just write a 5, or you can write it as 5 over 1. Then I have parentheses x, and I do the opposite of this 2 here, so I'm going to do a minus 2. And then that 3 for the y stays the same, so I'm going to keep it a plus 3. And there we go. All right, so we're basically doing the same thing, but without the table. So we are given our slope. Our slope is 1/2. So I can write my equation. I got y equals 1/2. Then I have a point, -1, 4. So -1 is my x. -4 is my y. And remember, we do the opposite of our first x. So when I write the equation, I'm going to write 1/2 x plus 1. So I do the opposite. And then minus 4 because I keep that the same. In number 5 here, you have 2 points. So what you want to do, if you're given 2 points, you want to make a little table here so that you can figure out the slope. So I have -1, -4, and then we have 3, 3. So I am going to write out what the slope is, right? So if we're going from -4 to -3, it's getting positive. So I'm going to be plussing by 7. On the other side here, I'm going from -1 to 3, so I'm plussing by 4. So that means my slope is going to be a 7 over 4. All right, so when I write out my equation, I got y equals 7 over 4, and then we have x, and you can have 2 different equations in this one, but I'm going to use this first one. So this is my x, and I do the opposite. and then this is my y, and we do the same. So in this one, I have y equals 7 over 4, which is what we found, times x plus 1, I do the opposite, and then minus 4 because I did the same. All right, so in this one, it's kind of using example 4 again, but we're also going to graph. So first it tells us our point goes through negative 3, 0. So and this is my x, and this is my y. So negative 3, 0 is going to be this point right here. Now, my slope is negative 5 over 3. So I'm going to rewrite this so I write it how I say it, negative 5 over 3. All right, and this tells me to go down 5, right 3. So from this point, down 5, right 1, 2, 3. And I can do that again, down 5, right 3. And then because we're graphing, you always want to extend, so you want to do the opposite movements. So the opposite is up 5, left 3. So starting from that point, up 5, left 3. We could do that once, and it looks like we can do it again, up 5, left 3. All right, so that's how you graph. Now, we know the point and we're given the slope. So the slope is already given to us, which is nice. So we know it's going to be y equals negative 5 over 3. All right, and then our point here, remember we do the opposite of the x because we always don't like our first x. And then we do the same as our y. So let's write that out. You can write the equation like this top, but technically if you're adding by 0, nothing changes. So you'll probably see it more written like this. But I will take this as an answer, okay? If you need more examples, we will do some.